Chapter 33. King Fred is worried. Little knowing of the new threat to their schemes, Spittleworth and Flapoon had just sat down to one of their usual sumptuous late-night dinners with the king. Fred was most alarmed to hear of the Ickabog's attack on Baronstown, because it meant that the monster had strayed closer to the palace than ever before. "Ghastly business," said Flapoon. "Shocking, really," said Spittleworth. "But what I don't understand," fretted Fred, "is how it slipped through the blockade." For of course the king had been told that a division of the Ickabog Defence Brigade was permanently camped around the edge of the marsh to stop the Ickabog from escaping into the rest of the country. Spittleworth had his explanation ready. "I regret to say that 2 soldiers fell asleep on watch, your majesty. Taken unawares by the Ickabog, they were eaten whole." "Suffering saints," said Fred, horrified. "Having broken through the line, the monster headed south. We believe it was attracted to Baronstown because of the smell of meat. While there, it gobbled up some chickens, as well as the butcher and his wife." "Dreadful, dreadful," said Fred. "And then it slunk back home to the marsh, did it?" "So our trackers tell us, sire. But now that it's tasted a butcher full of Baronstown sausage, we must prepare for it trying to break through the soldiers' lines regularly, which is why I think we should double the number of men stationed there. Sadly, that will mean doubling the Ickabog tax." Luckily for them, Fred was watching Spittleworth, so he didn't see Flapoon's smirk. "Well, I suppose that makes sense," said the king. He got to his feet and began roaming restlessly around the dining room. The lamplight made his costume, which today was of sky-blue silk with aquamarine buttons, shine beautifully. As he paused to admire himself in the mirror, Fred's expression clouded. "Spittleworth, the people do still like me, don't they?" "How can your majesty ask such a thing?" said Spittleworth. "You're the most beloved king in the whole of Cornucopia's history. It's just, riding back from hunting yesterday, I couldn't help thinking people didn't seem quite as happy as usual to see me. There were hardly any cheers and only one flag." "Give me their names and addresses," said Flapoon. "I don't know their names and addresses," said Fred. "They were just people, passing by, but it upset me rather, and then, when I got back to the palace, I heard the day of petition has been cancelled." "Ah," said Spittleworth, "yes, I was going to explain that." "There's no need," said Fred. "Lady Eslander has already spoken to me about it." "What?" said Spittleworth, glaring at Flapoon. He'd given his friends strict instructions never to let Lady Eslander near the king, because he was worried about what she might tell him. Flapoon scowled and shrugged. Really, Spittleworth couldn't expect him to be at the king's side every minute of the day. "Lady Eslander told me that people are complaining that the Ickabog tax is too high. She says rumours are flying that there aren't even any troops stationed in the north." "Piffle," said Spittleworth, though in fact it was perfectly true. It was also true that there'd been even more complaints about the Ickabog tax, which was why he had cancelled the day of petition. The last thing he wanted was Fred to hear that he was losing popularity. He might take it into his foolish head to lower the taxes, or even worse, send people to investigate the imaginary camp in the north. "There are times, obviously, when 2 regiments swap over," said Spittleworth. "Possibly some foolish marshlander saw a regiment riding away and imagined there was nobody left up there." "Why don't we triple the Ickabog tax, sire? After all, the monster did break through the lines last night. There can never again be any danger of scarcity of men on the edge of the marshlands, and everyone will be happy." "Yes, it does make sense," said King Fred. "I mean, if the monster can kill 4 people and some chickens in a single night." At this moment Cankerby the footman entered the dining room, and with a low bow whispered to Spittleworth that the Baronstown spy had just arrived with urgent news. "Your Majesty, I must leave," said Spittleworth. "Nothing to worry about. A minor issue with my, horse." Chapter 34. 3 more feet. "This had better be worth my while," snapped Spittleworth 5 minutes later, as he entered the blue parlour where the spy was waiting. "Your lordship," said the breathless man, "they're saying the monster's hopping." "What? Hopping? They've noticed all the prints are made by the same left foot." Spittleworth stood speechless. It had never occurred to him that the common folk might be clever enough to spot something like that. Indeed, he, who had never had to look after a living creature in his life, hadn't stopped to consider the fact that a creature's feet might not all make the same prints in the ground. "Must I think of everything?" bellowed Spittleworth, and he stormed out of the parlour and off to the guard's room, where he found Major Roach. The Major leapt to his feet at the sight of Spittleworth. "I want you to assemble the Ickabog Defence Brigade immediately. You're to ride north, and be sure to make plenty of noise as you go. I want everyone from Shoeville to Jeroboam to see you passing by, and once you're up there, spread out and mount a guard over the border of the marsh." "But," began Major Roach, who'd got used to a life of ease and plenty at the palace. "I don't want buts, I want action," shouted Spittleworth. "Rumours are flying that no one is stationed north. Go, and make sure you wake up as many people as possible, but leave me 2 men, Roach, just 2. I have another small job for them." And so Grumpy Roach ran off to assemble his troops, and Spittleworth proceeded along to the dungeon. The first thing he heard when he got there was the sound of Mr. Dovetail, who was still singing the national anthem. "Be quiet," bellowed Spittleworth. The carpenter appeared quite different to Lord Spittleworth since the last time he saw him. Since learning that he wasn't to be let out of the dungeon to see Daisy, a wild look had appeared in Dovetail's eye. Of course he hadn't been able to shave for weeks either, and his hair had grown rather long. "I need another 3 feet, do you hear me? 1 more left foot and 2 right. Do you understand?" Mr. Dovetail stopped humming. "If I carve them, will you let me out to see my daughter, my lord?" he asked. Spittleworth smiled. It was clear to him that the man was going slowly mad, because only a madman would imagine he'd be let out after making another 3 Ickabog feet. "Of course I will," said Spittleworth. "I shall have the wood delivered to you first thing tomorrow. Work hard, carpenter. When you're finished, I'll see you are let out to see your daughter." When Spittleworth emerged from the dungeons, he found 2 soldiers waiting for him just as he had requested. Spittleworth led these men up to his private apartments, made sure Cankerby the footman wasn't skulking about, locked the door, and turned to give the men their instructions. "There will be 50 ducats for each of you if you succeed in this job," he said. "You are to follow the Lady Eslander, morning, noon, and night. She must not know you are following her. You will wait for a moment when she is quite alone, kidnap her, without anyone hearing or seeing anything. If she escapes, or if you are seen, I shall deny that I gave you this order, and I will put you to death." "Well, what do we do with her once we've got her?" asked one of the soldiers. Well, a lady of the court isn't the same as a butcher. The Ickabog can't enter the palace and eat her. No, I think it best if you take Lady Eslander to my estate in the country. Send word when you've got her there, and I'll join you."